Radio. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for downloading this episode from Teachers Talk Radio. You can find the full schedule and listen back to all our shows at ttradio.org. Enjoy the podcast.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Teachers Talk Radio with myself, Michael Wright and Jen Hurst. Firstly, Happy New Year to everyone. It is our first show of 2026. That's right, I was about to say 2025. First show of 2026. I certainly hope that we've all had a wonderful Christmas, a very, very jolly New Year, and more importantly, we are not necessarily dreading next week. This is our new starting slot moving forward. So we'll be continuing on with our Sundays at 1 p.m. And I think, Jen, it's kind of timing has been quite fortuitous that we're discussing CPD today because majority of us will be in inset tomorrow. So I think it's hopefully a good conversation for us to get into about inset, but more importantly, cover the whole aspect of CPD. Jen, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well, thank you. It's been an interesting Christmas break and New Year. Nice to see you in the new year. Nice to be talking about CPD, which is something that I'm very passionate about. And nice to be here with you, Michael.
Oh, bless you. And also to Joanne as well, Happy New Year to you as well. We got a lovely comment from you on LinkedIn. So yeah, thank you very much. Did you get up to much over the Christmas and New Year? Was it nice and chill? Were you busy with various activities with friends and family?
Very family focused Christmas break, this one. Very family focused, quite quiet. I didn't have much of a voice. I've had cold. I didn't have much voice over the whole entire break. So yeah, it's been a quiet, family-focused Christmas.
Do you know what?
How about you, Michael?
I was about to say, thank you for that. I was about to say that the more and more I'm in education, the more and more I lean towards that quiet. Like everyone asks me, well, how was your holiday? And it used to be, I used to do this and used to do this, but I've kind of leaned into that, same as you, quiet, family-focused with friends. Not doing much. It was good. You know, although I did keep busy, but busy with the things that don't necessarily require too much energy, if that makes sense. So it was about reconnecting with friends, with families, kind of connecting with various people that I've had the privilege of making the connections with on my various social media platforms. So almost going to see them face to face and having those face to face conversations. So it's been really good. And I think most importantly, Jen, and I'm sure a lot of us will nod our heads in agreement, not much, if at all, any work, even though I've been in the background kind of, as I always do, sorting out a few things here and there. I guess as part of my resolutions for 2026, I wanted to really slow it down so that I can hit this next term properly, as opposed to hitting it already in that kind of stage of being tired. Do you have any resolutions for this year at all, Jen? Is there anything that
Do you know what? That's a great question. I actually haven't. I've heard people speaking about resolutions on the radio and on the radio and whatnot, podcasts and various things online. And I don't have any resolutions, but I feel like what I do want to do this year is build on some really good steps that I put in place for myself in 2025 and some things around, you know, how I'm using my time and how I am facing the world. So yeah, I'm going to continue to build on good things from last year. I don't feel like I want to add anything new. Maybe it's a year of consolidation for me.
I think that's fair. I think that's absolutely fair. Anyone here listening in, it'd be lovely. Put your resolutions in the chat, and if we've got time, we'll certainly read them out as we go. So let's crack on then. CPD, could be slightly thorny issue, or it could be an engaging issue for us here. We're going to discuss really its place, its relevancy, the good points, the bad points, anything to do with how us educators continue to train. Just as a special mention, Jen here engages a lot with CPD and has done some wonderful things and continues to do wonderful things in terms of CPD training. I myself try to keep as active as I possibly can with not only my own personal CPD, but also putting stuff out that I think or I hope would be a benefit to various people. So we're really putting this question to us, to the audience and to ourselves in terms of the relevancy and how we generally feel about CPD. I've been around teaching long enough to know that there are those who engage with it and think it's actually a benefit to what they do. And then there are those who don't think it is and make it very, very clear that certainly on inset days, when you shuffle into the hall or shuffle into various building, they are often the ones which are the loudest and proudest that let everyone know that they should not be here and this is a complete waste of time. Or in one case, which I remember one colleague who was quite brazen enough to book a holiday and just so happened to book their flight on the day of inset. So, sorry, can't come to inset because, I'm flying back from Antigua or wherever it is, even though they knew that the starting date was this one. Anyway, each to their own. So yeah, we'll be discussing that. Of course, CPD is meant to support teaching, progression, insight. It's meant to be the inspiration, isn't it, Jen? It's meant to be that connection that we all need to have from time and time again to make us realize, hey, teaching it's not necessarily a linear profession. It's one that is multifaceted and you always need to keep on top of things. So that's what it's meant to do. So hopefully we'll be discovering that as well as key questions. We're looking at a temperature check. What's the general feeling on CPD as we obviously head into a new year? What makes CPD work? What's the most effective? We're not subject of department wise, but we're looking at the effectiveness as a whole staff cohort. What do we feel is the most effective that will really play a part in what we do in the classroom? We're also taking into consideration the SLT needs because, they're the team that plan inset. So there's considerations obviously for senior leaders. So we'll be trying to discuss it from that perspective, and hopefully Jen will provide a bit more insight into that one. And finally, it is okay to feel disengaged with CPD. Certainly CPD that doesn't resonate or speak with you as a teacher or as an educator. I know Jen and I both are music teachers and music educators, and I'm pretty certain that we've been in CPD sessions where they're talking about numeracy or literacy or something which is more focused on, I don't want to say core, but focus on that aspect. And then there's the arts teachers that sit there going, well, I don't know, it does concern me to a certain degree, but to go into that specifics of phonics and whatnot doesn't really concern us. So what do we do here? So yeah, lots to cover, but hopefully we'll get that as much done as way. But before we begin, we do need to give you words from our wonderful sponsors. Hatchet still sponsoring Teachers Talk Radio, and we are brought in partnership with Hatchet Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. So, Jen, the general feeling behind CPD. When you hear CPD, what's your first reaction?
Well, I think that for me, I have to say, it's only just come to mind, but I was trained really, really well as a trainee teacher, and I had a really supportive team at Birmingham City University where I did my PGCE, and I came out of teacher training and into my first role, which was leading a department. And the team there kept in touch with me. And I because I've always been keen on CPD, because I've always been interested in kind of pedagogy, but also research. I've always been interested in those elements of teaching. And as such, there were always opportunities for me to be involved in projects linking back with the university. So I don't think I ever stopped thinking about my own professional development from the point of being a trainee into my first teaching role. And I always managed to circle back, and either I would contact them or they would contact me. I think I became a mentor as well really early on in teaching, and therefore for what were then trainee teachers, still are trainee teachers. And then I had NQTs in my department, NQTs at the time, newly qualified teachers, now called early career teachers. And so because I took on that mentoring role, I always had that hat on. I was always attending training about how to be a great mentor. And so I think when I think of CPD, I just think of something that always helps me to grow. It always helps me to develop myself. Then in developing myself, I'm giving the best to the young people. And also I'm very passionate about new teachers coming into the profession and just kind of helping them to stand and be confident in front of young people and to give the best of themselves to young people. And we would teach such a broad range of children, don't we? And that's not easy at all. So helping teachers to have the real full toolkit to be able to stand in any context and deliver with confidence. Those are some of the things that come to mind when I think about CPD and why I'm passionate about it. I don't think it ever stopped from my training into my time fully fledged teacher in the classroom.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. I didn't know you studied at BCU. I did my undergraduate.
I did.
Very, very, very good university. That I was going to kind of mention my views, which are very, very similar, but there's been some interesting comments put up.
They have.
For one, says CPD should also consider different starting points of the audience. Some for CPD is useless when it's stuff which is already known, stuff which is not relevant, or promoting dated and blanket methods. Now, that's quite interesting that Carla's mentioned it, because you were talking about the overall general CPD, which has benefited you. Whilst I'm in agreement that, you know, CPD shouldn't necessarily be promoting anything that is outdated, because, you know, it's almost like if you go to CPD and they're talking about learning styles and they're saying, well, our learners should fit into these categories. That's been disproven, you know, long before. So quite right. You should look at that and go, well, hang on a minute. That's not necessarily true. But interesting about the blanket methods, which this is the whole point with CPD, is that it has to be generalistic and it has to be broad, but it also has to be relevant, which is a very, very hard thing to plan for anyone doing that. Compare with the fact that you're going to have people naturally in their careers that are going to be somewhat suspect of CPD and inset. They're naturally going to go, oh, here we go again. That's 2 hours of my life that I'm not going to get back. So it's a hard one in there. So whilst I agree with Carla that, you know, stuff that isn't relevant, you can't pass on that one. I'm definitely in agreement with yourself, Jen, that when you're looking at CPD and sounds like you've had an amazing, you've had great training and done it right. There should be a broadness to it, but there should also be something where you can, no matter what subject you teach, you need to take something away from it, go, oh, I can use that, or I can adapt that, which isn't always the case. For my training, my PGCE, I was incredibly lucky to work with some great mentors. My first placement in particular was an absolute gem, but also my first experience of an inset day was sat by him. And he was quite sarcastic and he was quite quick with his wits. So there were a few mutterings underneath his breath in terms of what he felt about the inset, which I won't go into. But it was an interesting insight into a new teacher's coming in. I'm fresh-faced. I'm like, oh, this is all exciting. And then you've got someone here who's been weathered by the storm, so to speak, and kind of giving a rather cynical, albeit very funny, view in terms of the school inset and training. So that kind of, my first introduction of school inset was brought by that.
What was his view?
Here's a view. Well, it was this. Do you know what? Dated advice and dated policies and everything. It was also they're telling us, they're telling us how to fill in forms. They're telling us how to do X, Y, Z. So almost a compliance as opposed to a, hey, we're going to be starting this new term. This is what we're doing. I felt it was kind of tinged with a, here we go again. We've been promised this, they didn't do it. So it was almost pessimistic in that way, if that makes sense. Just another comment from Joanne here, just reading. I think you also have to be careful that some staff might not know what to do, but they are doing it. Oh, okay. So it's that conscious incompetence, isn't it? There's that grid, isn't it? I remember reading during my PGC, there's the grids of competence and incompetence. And sorry, I'm not saying anyone in here watching this is incompetent. I'm just referring to the grid here, not my words, the researcher. But yeah, it's about the idea of CPD being relevant enough to signpost people into, hey, you're doing a great thing, keep it up, or do you know that thing you were doing? Maybe you need to reconsider that too. And I agree. I think good CPD is a way of kind of gently reminding what we should do. But going back to my CPD, I've always been driven. I've always had this drive to want to know more, to learn more. And this probably comes from my professional background as a musician, but I've transferred it into teaching, and which will hopefully move on later on. That's moved on to my need to study for a master's degree, and hopefully, if all goes well, turn that into perhaps a PhD study. But that comes from my own drive and my own need to almost take control of my CPD. And I think for me, in terms of the general feeling with it, is that I trust my instincts enough because I've been working long enough as a teacher. So I trust my instincts. I'm not so myopic to kind of go, no, nothing else. I can't hear anything else. It's just going to be me in terms of my study. But I'm also very driven by all of the questions that I have when I'm doing my job, going, right, well, how about this? Well, this didn't work, or this did work. Why doesn't this work? I've noticed that this is like this. Why is it like this? And that's part of my nature in terms of, why I love working in education, because there's so many unanswered questions that I look at and I want to personally do that. It also means in terms of general feelings that I'm perhaps now not the best when it comes to sitting into CPD, because I am constantly in my mind going, okay, they said that, can they reference it? Is there any referencing? Can they triangulate that? You've said this, but what about this? So in my mind, if one person mentions something and I've got a cacophony of questions that I go in and on my laptop looking at this going, oh, what about this? So I'm probably not the best because I'm always wanting to, yes, but why is that? Why is this?
Well, I just feel like it's worth saying on that point. I don't think you're off track there. I'll come back in a moment to Joanne and Carla's comments, because I think there's some great points being made there, and clearly got a couple of people in the comments and listening in who are reflective practitioners. They're keen, they're curious, they're researchers, they want to know. That's when CPD, well, interestingly, that's when it can be the easiest, when you're delivering or programming CPD for people who fit into that category, people who are really keen to develop themselves. They're researchers, they're interested, they care about action research and what that means for their own classroom, what that means for their students. Like, that's when it's a beauty almost. But equally, sometimes that can be the toughest audience, because they're thinking, as you said, Michael, along the lines of, well, what does that look like? Where's the triangulated data? Actually, what does the theory say on that? How can I take that way and tailor it to my department, to my team? Because you're talking to me about oracy, but I teach music. What's the relevance? And actually, the things you mentioned before, numeracy, literacy, all of those things, they do, of course, they run across the entire curriculum. But I think the skill is in opening that up for every teacher and every member of staff sitting in that CPD session or engaging online or however you're delivering it. It's about finding a way to connect it to people at all different stages of their training or their career, their development, their teaching, and people in all key stages, because we're obviously thinking with a secondary hat on, but for primary teachers, is it key stage one, key stage two? What's the context of your school? Because that's going to have an impact on how you're delivering. And it's about making it very real and relevant. I've heard you mention relevance a lot for every single member of staff. So I think those are some of the challenges that, have to be unpicked, but skillfully managed, I would say. They need to be skillfully managed. And I just want to mention as well, this point that was here or from Carla. Carla says, we need professionals to have the skills to analyze and question info and apply it to the situation. Kind of links in with what I was saying just now. It's, I don't think you're asking the wrong things, but I think that's the strength of good CPD, is answering those questions, because people want to feel that what they're being taught, what they're being developed on, actually has some weight behind it and is going to make a difference. Here's another thing, Michael. I've always said I'm interested in and happy to deliver and work on anything that's going to have an impact for the young people that I'm teaching. But I don't want to spend time just regurgitating something because it says somewhere that that's on the CPD plan and we've got to be trained on it and we've got to deliver it.
Yeah.
That can't be what it's about. It's got to be about impact for young people. So with me personally, once I see impact, you've won me over. If I'm trained on something, I go away, I try it, and I see an impact over time. It doesn't have to be overnight, but over time, you've won me over, So yeah, they're just a couple of things I wanted to tag on, because you're almost saying it as though you were wrong for feeling those things, but you're not. That's exactly what sits beneath effective CPD.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, Carla, for your responses. Yeah, spot on. CPD shouldn't be performative, and I think that's the key. Is that if it becomes performative, tick box, yes, we've got to get through this agenda, then people are going to sign out, because nobody likes their time being wasted. Time is probably one of the most precious commodities in what we do. So that hour and a half, if you look at it, you go, I could have been doing this, it could have been that. You don't want it to be performative, but you're quite right. At the same time, you've got to look at it and go, what's the impact on my students? What's the impact on my day-to-day? What's the impact on that one, which is absolutely spot on. Before we move on to the next section, I want to give a shout out to the BETT show. Join it, BETT, for the biggest week of education from the 21st to 23rd of this month of January in the Excel Centre in London, with immersive workshops, thought-provoking speakers, hundreds of hours of CPD accredited content. Canny that it's come up for our conversation here. Cutting-edge technology and unrivaled networking. There is no opportunity quite like it for educators. Get your free ticket today by visiting uk.bettshow.com.
So we are thinking about what constitutes effective CPD. And there's a bit of a balance here between in-school CPD, which is what most people are going to be sitting in tomorrow and the next couple of days, or maybe did at the end of term, or we'll do it at some point else in the year. But in-school CPD, but also balancing that against external offers. So when I think about my most effective CPD that I have participated in, actually I have to think the things that come to mind for me were a course that doesn't run anymore, but it was called Teaching Leaders. It used to be run by Ambition Institute. They're now Ambition Institute, and they had a suite of programs, and I went on as a middle leader moving into senior leadership. I went on the Teaching Leaders program. That was transformational for me. That was an amazing program which took place over a period of time. I think it was something like 18 months that I was on that program, working with a coach. Oh my gosh, I don't remember my coach's name. I had an amazing leadership coach, and he really challenged me. He really pushed back and made me hold a mirror up to myself and think about what I was doing, how did others see me, okay, you've got this passion for music, but you've got to bring this team on with you. You've got to bring these people and help get them to help you to get to the outcome for the young people. He was wonderful, actually, now I come to think of it. And he was a drama specialist. So that was the first time in years, in all the years that I had been teaching, and by that time I'd been teaching over 10 years, he was the first person that was in that sort of coach role or leading me role, a leader of me in some capacity that had some sort of connection to the arts. So that kind of coaching is so important in terms of anyone can coach anyone. That's the beauty of coaching. You don't have to be from the same subject area or working at the same level. You can even have people coaching upwards. You can have all sorts of methods of coaching and pairings. But for me, having somebody who understood the arts really helped me. He just could hear what I was saying and could infer a lot that wasn't said and help me to think about how the work that I was doing was connecting with the young people and the team members around me. Teaching leaders was wonderful, but it wasn't only coaching. So it was multifaceted. It was in-person sessions. It was a residential that was wonderful, like a 2-3 night residential. Probably my worst nightmare, putting me on a residential. I don't want to do that. But it was really good for me. It was really good for me. And then so many great opportunities, presentations, fantastic. Another really good one for me was my MPQ, which I did a lot more recently, my National Professional Qualification in Leading Teacher Development. This is obviously a theme. You can see a theme here with me. It's something that I love. So it was a really good opportunity to have some up-to-date training, because that came a long time after the Teaching Leaders Programme. So I think effective CPD has to be up to date in terms of the content and the theory. And that's one of the things that, even though for people that are leading the CPD, they have to stand year in and year out in front of the same teachers, potentially teachers that have been long standing in a school, for example, it is up to those people to make sure that they're up to date with the most recent theory. That makes it relevant. It might be the same concept that you're talking about, but there will be updates in what's happening currently. And then also the final one that was good for me was my MA. And I think you mentioned your MA, Mike. My master's in leadership was transformational, really, really interesting, really, really deep in terms of the theory that I had to learn. But with all three of those programs, the other thing I would say is not only were they fantastic at keeping me, a very curious person, interested in what I was working on and keep applying it back to the classroom, they also were an investment in myself. So financially, I had to invest in myself in terms of my master's degree. And I did that part-time over something like 3 years, I think. But also, they were the three programs, those three that I've mentioned were the three programs that have all had the most impact in terms of my personal, but also my career development. So I feel like my master's degree paid me back before I'd even gotten the certificate. I'd been able to move up in position, move up in salary during taking on that master's degree, which was really hard, actually. It was a lot of work, but it was fantastic. But then if we think about that's one element of looking at sort of like external programs, there's also, this is probably more relevant to more teachers, is the internal CPD.
Yeah, I was going to mention. Yeah,
the internal CPD has got to be relevant. You've mentioned that it's got to be current in terms of the theory. It's got to be adaptable. So there are some things in the comments here about, it being relevant to what you're delivering. But I just think that there's no harm in talking about a whole school concept, not a whole school concept, but talking about a pedagogical element of teaching. That's fine, but there has to be time for people to go away, no matter if it's a one-person department or a 6 or 10 people department. They've got to go away and be able to think about, what does that look like now for us as a team of scientists? What does that look like for us as a team of Key State of Year 3 teachers? What does that look like for us as teachers of the arts, or even further down as a set of drama teachers or a pair of music teachers, or on my own as an art teacher? How does that look for me? And how can I have time now to embed it over time? How can I plan to embed it? But how can I tailor it so that I can sit and make the resources, I can sit and think about what other people have to say online about this same concept and go away and have some time to do some individual research.
This show is brought to you in partnership with Hachette Learning, publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hachetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles.
Teachers, have you heard of Bet UK 2026? It's the world's biggest education and technology event, and it's completely free for educators. From keynote speakers and panel sessions to CPD accredited workshops and networking, Bet UK 2026 is where educators from across the globe come together to share ideas, spark inspiration, and find solutions that fuel our mission to drive better education globally. Get your free ticket today at betshow.com.
Hey teachers, it's Tom here from Teachers Talk Radio, just dropping in to tell you about Teachers Talk Connect 2026. We are back with our amazing big annual CPD and networking extravaganza in Manchester. It's on Saturday, the 14th of March, and tickets are completely free for teachers. Just head over to ttradio.org/Connect 2026 to grab your ticket today. We can't wait to see you there.
How did that work for you as somebody leading PSHE? How did that work for you as someone leading PE? How did that work for you as somebody in a primary phase? You know, so it's almost like there's camaraderie and kind of like a team spirit. So I think that is one of the reasons why, for me, it feels really good externally. Also, that element of building trust is not something I would have thought of. You are the person that's brought that to my mind in terms of when I lead, say, online CPD. Building trust with the people that I'm working with in that space is very, very important. That's at the top of my list. People are not going to share if they don't feel that there's trust. But I wouldn't necessarily have thought of that from being in a school setting. But how important that is, how important that is, Michael, because people need to feel, teachers need to feel, school staff need to feel that they can share without fear of kind of repercussions or being judged or feeling like, they're going to... You were so honest in what you said. Somebody else is going to be thinking, why doesn't he know that? Shouldn't he know that after 10 years? And sometimes you'll see it in an expression, or sometimes someone will just say it to you, just get different personalities, don't you? So I think it's about trust, and I think it's about networks. I don't think it's about necessarily one being better than the other. I think the structure of it and that element of coming back and meeting with people, but then that element is really important. But in the best instances in school settings is where you do have that kind of openness, which I have to say more often than not I've experienced. I have probably been lucky where I felt like I can share my thoughts or my perspective. But yeah, you're right, it doesn't always happen. I was in a really good school inset on AI recently. It's up to date, it's relevant, it's something that I don't already feel like I know. I don't want to be just sitting down doing the same thing like people have said here, where I feel like I already know that and there's no new data, there's no new research, there's no new anything. I don't necessarily want to know about, being on the threshold of the door, for instance, because after 20 years I should have that nailed. Okay, but I may need to look at lesson starts, because maybe my threshold is great, but maybe my do nows aren't ready, or maybe I don't think about the order in which I'm going to get that first 10 minutes of the lesson sorted. So it may not be that I need to focus on threshold, but it may be that something else in that first 10 minutes isn't working. Maybe I'm just having a good old ramble to myself. Maybe my first activity isn't displayed. Maybe I haven't differentiated that or adapted that first activity. There may be many elements, many layers to the lesson start, but it may not be threshold for me. I may have that down. And Carla also says professional dialogue is so helpful and important in everyday school life. 100%. And we are very glad, Joanne, that you value the conversation. There are a lot of people that, this is really relevant for, not only the people delivering, but the people receiving the CPD as well. So those are a couple of things on the points you mentioned. But I would like to believe that in-school CPD can be just as great as external. And I just want to say about the AI CPD that I was going to mention, as I mentioned, so fantastic that it's something that we don't really even understand AI properly yet. So, like, of course, that's going to be interesting for me. I want to know how I can use it to improve my workload, how I
Yes.
can use it
Yeah.
to build quizzes, how I can use it to save myself time, how I can use it to support my students without plagiarism and all of those kind of things, how I know the rules. Following on from that AI session, I then had a question, well, how can this be used? When is this acceptable? When it's not?
Yeah.
So just opening up professional conversations again. Anyway, I've completely gone down a rabbit hole there, but then I did say I love this, so
That's quite all right. Don't worry. I had the soapbox set up before, so I think get used to it on that one. Good job that you mentioned about the considerations for SLT in terms of the planning, which we'll get into. If you just joined us, welcome for our first TTR show of the year. My name is Michael Wright. I'm with Jen Hurst, talking about the CPDs, New Year's same old CPD, and we're just really constructing the needs, the relevancies, all of the points of what makes effective and good CPD. Before we begin for our next segment, I wanted to give a shout out to Hatchet Learning, which is the show is brought to you in regards to Hatchet Learning. They're publishers of professional development books and resources that support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Level up your professional development today and visit hatchetlearning.com to explore the full range of titles. As well as that, we've also got some exciting news to share for you about the Teachers Talk Connect show. It's an annual CPD. Oh my goodness, there's more references to CPD here from our reads. It's our annual CPD networking extravaganza, joining the TTR team on Saturday the 14th of March in Manchester. Tickets are free and there are plenty going, so please head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026. That's ttradio.org/connect 2026 to get your tickets for our annual conference. So, yes, SLT considerations.
Yeah.
I'm going to leave this one to you, of course, because you've got plenty of experience. So what considerations do SLT think of, and when it comes to programming effective CPD, what comes to mind? What's the thought process that you've had when you've been in those meetings?
Yeah, I think that the most important thing from my perspective, and I also run my own CPD aside from my schoolwork as a consultant. So I think it's like an across the board perspective I have on this, but thinking about the school-based CPD, and I could probably just run this down briefly because time has run away with us, but I would say tailoring CPD for the needs of all staff. So if you're thinking about trainee teachers, early career teachers, even training for people that are early career teachers in year 1 and early career teachers in year 2 needs to be different because they're at completely different stages. And by ECT2, you've had your training year and that opportunity to trial things and make your mistakes, and that's fine. That, more than acceptable in year 1 to be making to be tripping up and trying things out and experimenting. I think experimentation is hugely important, and maybe isn't something that's spoken about enough, perhaps. Then thinking about, your teachers who have been around for a little while, your experienced teachers, those who want to transition into maybe pastoral, maybe into middle leadership, subject leadership, taking on a TLR responsibility, those who want to progress to SLT. And interestingly, sometimes the person leading CPD isn't right at the top of that tree at all. So you've still got to make sure there are pathways for people who, are right at the high end of the hierarchy or the spectrum there. So you got to make sure that there's something for everyone. But I really, really believe in the fact that it's all got to come back to a very clear kind of horizontal plan across the year. Where do we want to go? We're all traveling in the same direction, and we've got clear pointers along the way, but that those almost like benchmarks, those markers in the sand, are met according to the needs of the people that are sitting in front of you or that are around the table with you. So that's really important. There's considerations for time. And I think, we always want more time for everything, but how about you come back and you revisit ideas. In fact, there was a lovely post, that's an opportune moment to mention this, lovely post from Tom Sherrington, whose work I really enjoy. And just to shout out, he did some free YouTube tutorials during the pandemic, and they're absolutely brilliant if anyone wants to go and check those out. But he had a LinkedIn post recently that said, I won't read the whole thing, but something along the lines of the best PD you could do this week coming is to revisit what you were working on before. And I think that is ties in with how I see it. It's not always about more, adding new ideas, but it's about going deeper. It's about consolidating. It's about thinking about what's new. So that's important. And then another thing for SLT, I think that probably most SLTs might say they would always want more people who are willing to contribute to delivering CPD.
Oh, yes.
Because peer-to-peer CPD is really important. People like to hear from people they trust. So the maths team, always think of maths, the maths team might prefer to hear from someone within their team than to hear from me. And the scientists might prefer to hear from someone leading in science than from an English teacher. Actually, the English teachers always go down with it well with everyone. But I think, peer-to-peer CPD is really important. And I think, volunteer yourself, get involved, A, for your own development, but B, because it's nice to be helpful, and C, because your voice really matters. And there are going to be perspectives that you can bring, or maybe some elements that you can put across better than somebody else. Volunteer your time. Or I say volunteer, let me use that word lightly, but negotiate a way that you can contribute to CPD, and put it that way. Get involved, get stuck in, because I think SLTs would often love to have more voices coming forward.
Yeah, do you know what? It reminds me of my first school, my ETC school, and the SLT came up with a brilliant initiative it happened towards the latter part of the year, where we used to have quite a lot of CPD. If memory recalls, was it fortnightly? It was quite a lot, actually. It was we really pushed it in that sense. And they come up with an idea of asking the staff, is there anything that you want to present? Is there anything that you want to shine a light on in terms of best practice or something that you've been curious and you kind of want to share with the staff? And I loved it. I really liked hearing from my other colleagues about what they found important, or what they felt was perhaps a thorny issue in terms of their teaching and how they overcome it. Or, hey, I've done this amazing thing, I want to share that with you. And I remember doing a couple, and I really got a buzz out of it, even though I was new. At the time I thought, well, what do I know? Why am I going to stand in front of a cohort of teachers who've been teaching many years? What am I going to teach them? But that's not the point. As you mentioned, the point is it's about making it relevant, but the trust aspect of someone coming to the front, speaking about something, going, do you know what? This is what I find really effective. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone out there, or yourself, Jen, it certainly brings a sense of authenticity to hear it from a colleague, say on your level, or not least in SLT, because when I heard when I saw the CPD sessions from my colleagues, I instantly trusted them, because they were in the same area as me, and I didn't necessarily feel I was being spoken down to. I felt like I had an equal playing field on this one. So that was really, really effective. But I think in terms of the SLT planning, I thought it was a brilliant way of doing it, because as you know, if you're planning these sessions, they're very time consuming also for SLT, and it's really, really time and energy consuming to think about, I need to plan this. But not only are you planning it, of course, everyone's going to think, is it going to be right? Or is it going to be benefiting everyone? Whereas if it's self-directed, or even if you just organize, and then you, like you said, you do that peer-to-peer and you have those micro sessions, they're incredibly beneficial. Another thing I was going to say as well is that for an SLT members to consider, and I'm sure they do, is the kind of environment in the school. So if there is a school which you're working in which is struggling, and you've got an inspection coming up, do you really think people are going to be wanting to know about insignificant factors in terms of teaching? No, people are going to be on safety mode. People are going to be thinking about the inspection. They're going to be thinking about making sure X, Y, and Z is all sorted. So I think that kind of CPD, I'm sure SLT will be considering going, right, we need to focus this on what we need to do for inspection, or at least what do we need to do to address some of the issues that we know are there, but not necessarily put too much of a shine on it, because if we do, it's going to open the floodgates and then, X, Y, Z.
Okay, a couple of things, if I may.
Yeah.
One, just to say, I'll go backwards. I believe that every SLT that I have ever sat under as a middle leader, every school I've worked in, I can't think of one school that's ever spoken on terms of Ofsted and inspection, if I'm honest. Maybe I'm lucky, but I just don't hear that. But I don't want anyone listening to this to think I'm just, she's just not being realistic, or she's just saying that sounds the right thing to say. That hasn't been my personal experience. Actually, and on 2 occasions I've led on CPD in schools, and I think for me, in 2 different schools, and I feel like for me it's always been about wanting to make sure that everybody's got everything down pat. Everyone knows what they're doing. Everyone's functioning. The school needs to be functioning correctly. Lessons need to be functioning correctly anyway. So there shouldn't be anything that's happening just for the purposes of inspection. It should be a well-oiled machine. And then you're always going to have, people that have just joined, people that are early on in their career, people that are having a hard time because something else is going on in life and they just need a bit more support. So there may be times when you have to plug a gap or support people, but across the board, everybody should be working towards making sure their lessons are running effectively. And if we're honest anyway, there are times when it goes wrong because you have different priorities at different times. But nothing should be, from my perspective, nothing should be for the purpose of inspection. Another thing just to mention, you do not give yourself enough credit at all when you mention why would staff want to hear from you as an early career teacher. So when you had that feeling, absolutely not. Do you know that early career teachers are bringing in the most up-to-date theory, the most up-to-date research, the most up-to-date pedagogy, which those of us who've been, stuck in the classroom for years, we don't know about that stuff. We haven't heard that. We haven't read it. We haven't been taught it, because that is the purpose of academics. Academics are so important. They have that time and space to make sure they're able to bring trainee teachers the most up-to-date information. And we actually need that in school. We need to know about that, and we want to know about that. So there's a great strength in hearing from people at the start of their career. Not saying they wouldn't need help with the structure of a good CPD session or whatever, but yeah, we want to hear that. And there was something I wanted to mention from the comments as well, which was that somebody had asked, Joanne had asked, what are our views on instructional coaching as CPD? And I think instructional coaching is fantastic. So that coaching, I'm smiling again because it's a personal memory. That's why I'm smiling, Michael. The personal memory of the drama specialist who was my coach on teaching leaders. Again, that was an instructional coaching experience, and it was uncomfortable because I was like, why does he just keep telling me I've got to do stuff? Like, I like to think for myself. I like to do things my way, and he's just telling me, and he's holding me to account. It keeps coming back, and I had to show, incremental progress. That's what instructional leadership is about. It's about small steps of progress over time. There was no getting away with it. I could not hide. But why I think it's so good is because it holds you to account. Probes and asks questions, and it allows you to find the answers for yourself. So it's not about being told what to do, but it's about sitting down and having space. You mentioned, why do people prefer external CPD? Sometimes because you've got the space through instructional coaching to sit and talk with somebody about, and ask yourself questions about why it's working. Why does this work? Why doesn't this work with this class? Why doesn't this work with, as I say, my worst ever class, 8P3, first job? Woof! 8P3, that was a tough music group. Why is it not working with 8P3? It works with everyone else. So yeah,
When
that's
did
beauty of
you teach
instructional
the class?
coaching.
Was it Friday afternoon, or was it because give yourself some
I
slack?
can't. I want to say it was Friday afternoon, but I don't even think it was with 8P3. I don't think I had them on a Friday. We haven't got time. It's time to wrap up this show. Another time, we're going to talk about 8P3. My Lord.
All right.
Woo, tables and chairs. They were moving around the room. I'm telling you, that was a tough gig. Just out of teacher training. Goodness me. Anyway, let me just keep a check on these comments. I'll pass over to you, Michael. I just want to read these comments if that's okay, and get over the trauma of 8P3.
Sorry,
sorry if you were in 8P3.
Sorry, I brought that up. So while you're reading the comments, do you know, another thing I wanted to point out as well, that you mentioned, Jen, and this is a bit of a light bulb moment, and I'm thinking, I'm rather forecasting if I'm ever in a position to be in senior leadership. You mentioned about the specific points of the year, and I just envisioned being in a January inset of having a timeline of basically going term 1, this is what we're covering, term 2, this is what we're covering, term 3, this is what we're covering. And there's this idea of going back in term 2, start of term 2, what did we do in term 1? Great, we tick it off. If we haven't, go back, look at it. Let's look at term 2. So I love this idea in terms of, if you're looking at CPD, this is more planning, I would say, rather than the implementation, to having a timeline of going, this is what we're going to be covering this term, then this is what we covered last term. And this is what, when we finish term 2, this is what we'd like to do for term 3. Now, of course, as you said, things change, life, school, blah, blah, blah. But at least having this timeline, or at least having a trajectory of, this is what we did in the first term, and this is what our goals were, and this is what our goals are for term 2. And I quite like that idea of a collective, you said about accountability, right? So I quite like that idea of each other holding each other to accountability in terms of this, but not in a stringent, like, finger wagging, you must do this, but almost a case of, well, we need to make sure we're following the right path. And I love that image of a timeline of just things that we've done, things that we're doing, and things that we're going to do. And for me, if I looked at that as a staff member, I would see the broader picture, and I would then look at January and say, it's not as oh, here we go, it's my first one back, and I'm already a bit lazy and soft from a good Christmas. But I'm looking at it going, do you know what? That's incredible. I'm looking at what we've done, and now I've got targets to hit. So I thought that's absolutely amazing. Final thoughts from you, Jen, before we wrap up. Is there anything you wanted to add in terms of the effective CPD, and if anything that could be of wise wisdom to our listeners?
I think the only thing I would say is that I hope it's not New Year, same old CPD for anyone listening. And if it is, think about, be honest about what you would like. Because that feedback for anyone that's planning CPD for teachers is really important. People need data. They need to know what people want. And even speaking to what you just mentioned, the kind of the year-long plan, that can be shared openly with staff. It shouldn't be kind of like a hidden internal plan. So if staff can see that more, there's a lot of power in that. But yeah, I hope that people are going to have some fantastic CPD as they return to work. And if it's not working for you, then share with your line manager what you'd like, what you'd benefit from. That's what I would say.
Perfect. Great advice. Jen, thank you so much. Before we go, just another plug for Teachers Talk Connect. It's happening on Saturday, the 14th of March in Manchester. It's an annual CPD networking extravaganza by Teachers Talk Radio. Tickets are free and plenty available. Head over to ttradio.org/connect 2026 to get your tickets. Jen, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the first show, an amazing show. Thank you for everyone who's listening and for providing comments. We certainly hope it's been beneficial for you. And we really hope that tomorrow's inset and the next week is going to be great. And like Jen said, given loads of advice. If it's not working for you, ask your line manager. If it is, absolutely amazing. Everyone, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks' time for our next show. See you later, everyone.
Bye for now.
Bye.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.